Nigerians say all of them must abide by. The presidential candidates get back to the field to continue with their campaigns. The next time they will meet perhaps will be in the ballot box come February 14. For now, they live here with a food for thought that Nigeria cannot afford to make the mistakes of the past. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
So they have one of the reports in our archives lately about elections and what political parties and their candidates did say they were going to do. And then, of course, in the field, that's what we'll go ahead and discuss now. How is it playing out in the field? They put pen to paper, but are they putting their money where their mouth is? Let me move on to Mr. Tunji Lauda has since joined us. He's the executive director of Wangonet. Good evening.
Chamberlain, hi, how are you? Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. And let's look at some of these figures because, I mean, NHRC have come up with figures about what they've seen lately. Pre-election related violence, incidents of election violence during campaigns and elections. In Southwest, they've got the highest figure, 28 deaths. In the Northwest, 11. In Northeast, 9. South-South, 8. Southeast, 2. North Central, 0, but with high rates of injuries. They are signing accords back and forth. Do you think that these accords that are being signed have any bearing, any impact on whatsoever on what's happening in the field out there?
Well, to the extent that it signals an intention, right, by the political leaders to work towards harmonious elections, it's just that, it's just an intention, right? But beneath and beyond that is the actual real politic of how elections are conducted and why you have violence. You have to understand the type of violence. Political violence is not just an arbitrary, spontaneous outburst of violence, right? It's perhaps an illegitimate means to a particular political outcome. So politicians have used that, right? And it's illegitimate because it breaks the law, right? But for them, it's just a valid piece of another toolbox, another tool in their toolbox to which they can now achieve political ends. So the question we should be asking ourselves are two things, actually. Why are the stakes so high that would warrant violence on the one hand? And why is there a disconnect between all of those accords, all of those photo opportunities, all of those nice platitudes about peace that politicians make? It's also instructive, by the way, when I saw that clip, even the language of engagement, the two gladiators, by the time you start framing it in such gladiatorial terms, it means it's a battle, and that is at the heart of the challenge. It is a battle for political control, of which violence is just another dimension of how it's fought. To the question, does it make any difference on the ground? Yes, to the extent in which you know, the larger Nigerian society is working towards trying to educate young people, especially because they are the sharp end of that toolbox, right? To shun violence. But you have to go beyond the sloganeering, right? It's really a mindset shift that is required. And, you know, to really unpack why there's violence means going deep into the sociology of Nigeria. This is not a new thing. I mean, historically, we've had violence. It's almost expected.
You know, but
right?
That's another unfortunate aspect of this, because if you look through history, in the context of election-related violence in Nigeria,
yes,
since 1964,
yes,
we've had this kind of challenge. And so, what does that say? Does it mean that we're just scratching the surface? And
what it says is that the Nigerian state is still forming. That you have weak institutions and powerful individuals and powerful interests that are way over and above the ability of the state itself to contain it. I mean, that's why I'm saying you're going deep into the sociology of this country and the political reality of this country. The reason why you have violence is that the state itself, in one of its classic definitions of statehood, does not have the ability to monopolize the instruments of violence. That's just one of the classic definitions of a state. The second definition is that a state has to be able to protect its citizens and secure lives and property. We failed on those two grounds. And the third part of it is that we don't even have the ability presently to secure our territorial integrity in terms of our geographic grasp of our territory. So you're looking at something that is far deeper than what we're discussing here. And violence is just a manifestation of that pathology.
Let me bring in this perspective as well, because we heard some people talk about this, and then I'm also wondering, in addition to what they say, this winner-takes-all mentality.
Yes, it's a zero-sum game.
Right from time,
It's a zero-sum game.
Is it because of the presidential system that we practice?
Well, that might also be part of it, but it's just a mentality because there are no other spaces outside politics. Right? Politics and the political game, as it were, is the surest and most, well, perhaps difficult, but the surest route towards capital accumulation. The structure itself is problematic, right? I don't think we ask the right questions. Okay, I'll give you hypothetically a real life scenario, okay? We really don't know how much we pay members of the House of Reps or the National Assembly, but by some estimates, right, they earn...
Not even the RMAFC figures?
No, those figures are, by some estimates, they earn as much as $2 million a year, right? Okay, so if you're coming from a small political territory, what wouldn't you give to be able to have access to that? Oh, by the way, when the stakes become much bigger, like at the presidency, right, you have the way it is constitutionally structured now, and the Nigerian presidency is one of the most powerful political offices in the world because you don't have the kind of checks and balances. They might be there on paper, right, but you don't have the kind of checks and balances that you should have when we're thinking in terms of the separation of powers and all of those classic political science terms, right? So there is incentive, right, by any means necessary, to paraphrase Malcolm X, to get to that position.
You know, in this climate, politics is big business. I mean, some of them see themselves as businessmen when they get into politics.
Yes.
And so if they spend all that amount of money, because it costs money in this election.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at how much they're raising for election campaign funds already.
Yeah.
So
billions and billions.
Yeah, so if a party spends that much and loses out, perhaps say at the center, and gets nothing.
Well, you're talking about the two things you've highlighted now. You're talking about the underlying reason why there's this desperation to the point where it becomes a do-or-die affair, right? And these things are all, I mean, you don't even have to go back to 1964. Let's start from 1999, right? The latter-day reincarnation of our Third Republic. Okay, so that is within a lifespan and the historical memory of most Nigerians, right? We had the first one in 1999 coming after a military dictatorship. But at some point, some head of state said it was a do-or-die affair. So when even the political actors see it in such stark, extreme terms, everybody else takes their cue from what the president says and the body language of the political party itself. This is a zero-sum game. It's a game of total, you know, extermination, right? It's almost like, you know, the ravages of the Roman Empire. You obliterate your enemy and you soft the ground thereafter so they can't grow anything there.
But we see democracy practiced in other climes.
Yes.
Why is ours different?
Ours is different because of a mindset. It's not enough to conduct elections every 4 years and pretend that you have a democracy, right? What we have is civil rule. It's not democracy. What we're looking for is participatory democracy, where I, as just an ordinary citizen, can actually go to the polls and vote in whoever I wish, with the expectation that that person would best represent my interests. There's nothing like that in the Nigerian political reality. And we kid ourselves into this, you know, quadriennial pretense of elections. Yes, but you can see how fiercely contested it is. The excellent work that the Human Rights Commission has done is, it's almost like a signal, it's a warning that even before we even have elections, we're having this kind of numbers, right? But I'm sure that if you actually dig deeper, the numbers and the casualties are even much more than perhaps they could formally verify. So again...
and this is within a short time frame.
A very, very short time frame.
Up until January, because, January 2015.
Well, it hasn't taken into consideration what happened at Okrika, right? So there's a whole culture and climate of violence around elections, and we've accepted it as the norm, right? I mean, we really have to now begin to re-examine our own framing of democratic practices. And the thing that is missing is that we do the election thing every 4 years, and then we come back and repeat it again another 4 years. But we forget that in the 4 intervening years, there's governance. We've refused to strengthen our institutions of state. The state is being weakened by the power of the proverbial big men. So when you have